Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Political questions are omitted as students sit for their liberal studies exam. 2 people are injured in a massive fire at a construction site in Tsuen Wan. And Russia threatens swift retaliation against meddlers as the European Union accuses Moscow of blackmail. For the second year running, students taking their university entrance exam were not asked any political questions in liberal studies. That came as a relief to teachers who felt that students might not be ready because COVID resulted in fewer face-to-face classes ahead of the Diploma of Secondary Education exam. Macy Mock reports.
It was a testing day for about 44,000 students as they wrestled with questions in the liberal studies exam that lasted over 3 hours. Which question is the most challenging?
I think it's the Olympic one. I don't watch the Olympic much.
I think this paper not quite challenging, but there's a lot of point you have to think about. You have to study really hard for it.
The school-based assessment for liberal studies this year was cancelled because of the pandemic, so students only had to complete 2 papers. Like last year, there were no questions on political issues. Liberal studies teachers said the questions in the Diploma of Secondary Education test were similar to last year, with the topics described as common issues and manageable. In Paper 1, students had to answer 3 questions on volunteer services, the Olympics, and remote work. For the second paper, they had to choose one of 3 topics: traditional Chinese customs, the Hong Kong Palace Museum, or a meat-free diet.
Maybe the Hong Kong Palace Museum will be less chosen one because somehow I think some of them, they don't have a good understanding about the museum. I don't think any one of these 6 questions contain any kind of controversial debate that we have experienced in the past 10 years in the history of liberal studies examination.
One of the challenges for students is that they may not be well prepared because of the lack of face-to-face lessons.
This is the penultimate year that liberal studies is included in the DSE exam before it is replaced by a new subject, citizenship and social development. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
2 people have been injured in a 3rd alarm fire, which broke out at a construction site in Tsuen Wan. Firefighters took 4 hours to douse the flames and are now investigating the cause of the blaze. Joanna Ho reports.
Explosions were heard when a fire broke out in a 2-story modular block in a Tsuen Wan construction site at around 6:40 a.m. Firefighters arrived at the scene on Hoi Kok Street in 3 minutes and upgraded the blaze to a number 3 alarm after 10 minutes.
The site sits right underneath the BC Tsuen Wan Road flyover, a main thoroughfare connecting Kowloon and northwestern New Territories. Motorists had to exercise extra caution this morning as thick smoke hampered their visibility.
2 men were injured. Both work for the Drainage Services Department, which manages the site. One of them was found on the ground after jumping from the 1st floor to escape the flames.
There were 2 people at the fire scene when the fire broke out. They were suffering from inhalation of smoke and suspected limb fractures.
The 2 victims were sent to Yan Chai Hospital. Firefighters deployed 4 jets and 3 breathing apparatus teams and extinguished the blaze in 4 hours. Lowe said the complex structure of the modular block made it difficult to fight the fire and called for an evaluation on the stability of such structures. He added that as no dangerous goods were found at the scene, the explosions could have been caused by air conditioners. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
Just hours after the fire was put out, emergency services were called back to the scene. But this time it was to deal with two burst underground pipes as water shot up 10 meters into the air. Water mixed with sand and mud covered the road. A huge crater was formed, forcing police to block Hoishing Road until repairs were carried out. The Center for Health Protection has defended the government's quarantine measures after 87-year-old actor Kenneth Tsuen died in a hotel.
For those who have special needs under quarantine, they can apply to have family members to accompany them during the quarantine period and to take care of them.
Tsuen's body was found in his room in a Kowloon hotel where he was in isolation after flying in from Singapore. His death sparked calls for the elderly to be allowed to quarantine at home. New COVID infections in Hong Kong, meanwhile, fell slightly today to 413, of which 24 were imported. There were 10 infections in schools, affecting 9 students and 1 staff member. 5 people died from COVID in the past 24 hours. Hong Kong today registered its second BA.5 case. The Omicron variant was detected in a 40-year-old man who arrived from South Africa via Doha last Saturday. He tested positive at the airport. Local COVID infections in Taiwan have jumped above 10,000 for the first time, with health officials expecting cases to keep rising. The 11,350 new cases were almost all asymptomatic and concentrated in the northern part of the island. 2 unvaccinated elderly people succumbed to the virus. Despite the upward trend, the government reduced quarantine time and urged people not to worry because of the high vaccination rate. Overseas, Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned of a lightning-fast retaliation if other countries interfere in its war against Ukraine. It came as the West accused Moscow of blackmail for insisting on payment for gas in rubles. Winner Wong reports.
After being hit by Western sanctions, Russian President Vladimir Putin met legislators to deliver a warning. If someone intervenes from outside, creates strategic threats unacceptable for us, they should know that our response will be lightning fast, he said. The European Union, meanwhile, hit back after Russia cut gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria because they refused Moscow's demand to pay in rubles.
It comes as no surprise that the Kremlin uses fossil fuels to try to blackmail us. This is something the European Commission has been preparing for in close coordination and solidarity with member states and international partners. Our response will be immediate, united and coordinated.
Von der Leyen said EU neighbors are providing Poland and Bulgaria with gas. The West is also stepping up the supply of weapons to Kyiv as Russia continues its assault across Ukraine.
Heavy weapons, tanks, aeroplanes, digging deep in our inventories, ramping up production. We need to do all of this. Our sanctions have already seen Russia facing its first external debt default for a century, and we need to go further.
And in a major U-turn, German lawmakers voted in favor of sending heavy weapons to Ukraine. Winner Wong, HKIBC.
Standard Chartered shares listed in Hong Kong surged 10.4% today after the bank's first quarter profit exceeded market expectations. The lender posted pre-tax earnings of $1.5 billion, up 6% from a year ago. Investors were attracted by the bank's prospects, with Chief Executive Bill Winters predicting a 10% return on tangible equity within 2 years. Stanchart also expects its income this year to increase by more than the 7% it had forecast earlier. Mainland and Hong Kong stocks rose today after a decline in COVID cases across the border renewed investor confidence. The Shanghai Composite gained 0.6% as infections on the mainland fell to 11,300 yesterday, a drop of about 3,000 from Tuesday. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index jumped 1.7%. Alibaba rose 4.4% as tech shares advanced after Premier Li Keqiang pledged to unblock supply chains. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng ended the day up by 329 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent gained $5 while the tracker fund was up 32 cents. JD.com up by $9.80 while AIA Insurance was up by $1.40. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro's at 8.23, pound sterling at 9.76 and the Australian dollar at 5.56. Over in Europe, the London FTSE is currently up by 70 points. Locally, a recent wave of public interest in cultural heritage has led to more people searching for boundary stones. Many used to dot the city, but only 3 on the border between New Kowloon and the New Territories have been found. Johanna Chan reports.
Just a stone's throw away from residential buildings, a barely noticeable block of granite sits near a tree. The block is actually a marker stone, which was reported to the concern group Historical Walk Hong Kong.
The boundary stone here near Tai Po Road is believed to be just one of many stones marking the boundaries separating New Kowloon and the New Territories. The concern group believes there are still stones to be unearthed.
This type of marker was used to survey land for auction or lease. Over time, many were lost. This particular one was covered in cement and only found after recent construction. It is believed to date back to 1937 when borders were reconfirmed. Only 3 markers have been found, the first on Jat's Incline, about 10 kilometers away.
Boundary stone not just stand by its own, it has meaning behind it. Look back to the history and you will know what happened in that area. So that's why we think it is quite interesting and you can have another aspect to look at the history.
Some stones might have been destroyed earlier because people did not know their significance.
Please do not remove it without any notification, and maybe if it is not really stand on the way, the best way is to keep it as the original position.
The Antiquities and Monuments Office said the 2 stones found on Tai Po Road and Jat's Incline will be listed as heritage sites and be graded and protected. A 3rd stone on Beacon Hill is still awaiting review. There's been a renewed interest in local history, partly because of the pandemic, with more people visiting heritage sites. The controversy over the Bishop Hill Reservoir, which was nearly demolished in 2020, was another factor. Johanna Chan, HKIBC.
Now on to the weather. Mainly fine tomorrow and very hot during the day. Temperatures will range between 27 and 33 degrees. Expected to be hot with some sun on Saturday, but turning cloudy with thunderstorms on Sunday. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.